Welcome back, everyone. We're all learning that consolidation is a fairly dangerous thing. In 2024, we've already had nearly 6,000 games industry layoffs. That's in like 26 days. That is 60% of the entire total for 2023. But we're starting to see some patterns emerge. Patterns that bode incredibly poorly for both the legacy of games and also for the future of the games that you want to play. Over at the Embracer Group, their strategy is to potentially close one of gaming's most influential studios, one that actually meant a lot to people's childhoods, but of course in a way where they're still going to be able to profit off the work of that team because, well, they've obviously taken the parts that could be useful for their own. And indeed, in between the time of us originally putting this report together, recording, we've had 50% layoffs of another studio under the Embracer label, Black Forest Games. Crazy. And then elsewhere in the industry, we are seeing the threat to the sort of multi-studio support network that is one of the only reasons why games like D4 and other massive titles are even able to release. There are a lot of these support studios that provide, they make so many assets for so many games. They never really get the credit, but when stuff is falling on them, you really do know that stuff is going rough. While then, we have the hubris of developers turned publicly traded publishers also beginning to show signs of cracking. The games industry is in a crisis. It's not like the entire thing is bursting, but bubbles that comprise it are bursting. It is impacting the games that you want to play, and it's only going to impact you more as time goes on. Let's get into it with today's video. Me and the team are working as hard as we can to make sense of all of this for you, and if you would like to support our show, check out today's sponsor, your fellow viewers. So here's the TLDR. I want to work together with you, and in return, you will get early content, exclusive content, amongst other things. The problem is that YouTube ad revenue is falling to pieces, and relying solely on sponsors to literally pay wages for research, that is a dicey game. Also, the big algorithms suck and we all know why. So, we made Bellular.ghost.io, our own platform built on open source tools. And over there, you will get Loading Screen, our daily newsletter that will soon be building into a podcast, as well as early access to content and access to all of our research documents and reports on the stories. So you'll actually see our research reports before I do when I'm recording them. And of course, you can hang out with me and the team over on the Members Lounge Discord server. It is the best way to support us so that we can together have a sustainable, independent future and make content of ever-increasing quality for years to come. You can check the link out down below. And with that, let's get into the stories. Okay, we got to dive into Embracer, don't we? So here's the deal. In May of 2019, they said that they had acquired Piranha Bytes and all of their IP, and they described them as one of the most iconic German game studios. The creators, I mean, look, have you heard of Gothic? Piranha Bytes did Gothic. Gothic, Risen, more recently, Elix, and they just talked up the team. Of course they did. It was their new acquisition. And to be honest, that might even be downplaying them, because while their games certainly in terms of, sort of final polish and some aspects of scope won't compare to everything else that's on the market now, you gotta remember what Gothic was back in 2001. It basically set, or helped to set, the bar of what a kind of 3D role-playing game actually was. So its DNA is in so many of the games that you have touched. And over the years, they have, they've done a lot, 9 games across 21 years, and with the acquisition of them, that meant that Embracer owned a pretty damn significant bit of gaming history. Of course, you knew that this was going to go bad, so let's talk about that. In 2024, reports coming in from German games media podcast The Pod that Piranha Bytes appears to be the latest victim of Embracer, where they were ordered to be closed by Embracer back in November. And this was, by the way, not because of the performance of any title that they had put out. It was just Embracer's global mandate to, just only have short-term wins. Just cut everything else. Goodbye, we don't want you. And that's horrible. Now, the next game would have been apparently outside of the scope of Embracer's current ambitions, which I think can best be described as money me now, money me now. That's all that they want. Money now. Decent money in a middle amount of time? Absolutely not. Risk? No way. That is just how, ruinous their whole big deal, falling through, how that was to their plans. And now this Oh, this restructure is absolutely beautiful. So seemingly management attempted to negotiate here, but all of that did was just delay employees getting a termination notice by a month. Which sucks. Now, there is an interesting element to this as a result of geography. Embracer are not opposed to selling or spinning off Piranha Bytes. Actually, take Volition, they were happy to sell or spin them off. Of course, that would save them time and money. Now, there is an interesting wrinkle to this that is quite to do with their geography, quite to do with being in Germany. So this is from the podcast hosts and their sort of analysis of the situation. The parent within Embracer basically said that if Piranha Bytes management can find a way to continue via a new buyer or a publisher, then they can keep the name and the rights to Elix. But according to the hosts of the podcast, it is also in Embracer's interests that Piranha Bytes finds a new partner because layoffs in Germany can take a long time and can often end up in court. As an example, I'm thinking about, say, Blizzard getting out of France, closing their offices in Versailles, where just if you're doing any of that in, say, a country like France with its very strong labor protections, then, well, yeah, that can be a big problem. And also a reason why some of these big multinationals would rather not set up in somewhere like France. So quite something. But anyway, the staff have got their notice, but even with that, the company still could somehow continue if they can find a buyer. Now, before the story ends, there is just something that, while obviously they can do, just feels wrong, okay? So, the studio may be dead, effectively, but that doesn't mean that the folks over at Embracer can, not profit from what they've done. Much like, say, with, doing that deal with Epic for the Saints Row stuff after they shut down Volition. So, per the reporting here, Embracer was not willing to offer Piranha Bytes the rights to the Gothic series if they were able to find a new publisher. And the reason why is, well, because the Gothic franchise can still make Embracer some money because they're doing the remake of Gothic 1. Yes, one of the biggest things to come from all of this was that THQ Nordic were working on a remake of the original Gothic, and they were doing that with a newly founded studio in Spain. And as of August 2023, they've been showcasing their work. Here it is, new Gothic. I mean, hey, all looking pretty cool, but it just does feel quite horrible. I mean, this game could be cancelled, but there's been no evidence that it has been cancelled, so we're kind of just in this situation where, Embracer purchased Piranha Bytes 5 years ago, they helped them publish a sequel, they gave them their sort of flagship game, they gave that a remake with another studio, and then they just shut down Piranha Bytes. Then, of course, Piranha Bytes gets to go, and if it does get acquired, well, it can take the stuff that really wasn't worth as much, while obviously Embracer Group gets to hold on to the good thing, which is Gothic. And maybe if you were wanting to pick up Piranha Bytes, would you want Elix or would you want Gothic? You'd probably want Gothic. So that maybe just might kill them. Yeah, it's just grim. And I mean, I know they can do it, but it feels ghoulish, man, doesn't it? But if you thought that was the end of Embracer-related bullshit, no, far from it, because we got to talk about Lost Boys Interactive. So your story here is, of course, Gearbox, right? Gearbox, Borderlands, all that stuff. They were acquired by Embracer Group in 2021, and then in 2022, they acquired Lost Boys. Now, Lost Boys are a company that provides support to other developers, and fairly big ones. I mean, Diablo 4, Tiny Tina's Wonderland as well, so that's that Gearbox connection. And look, there's always a need for support studios in AAA. And sometimes the reason there is just that maybe you have a project, it's particularly large, and being able to tap in to a pool like that is just extremely valuable. And then it's good that instead of having to hire a bunch of people and then sort of fire them all after you don't need them anymore, if they're working in a support studio, then that support studio can continue getting gigs for itself. And that just is, you would think, ideally pretty good for, for jobs in the industry. But, well, not this time, because they have just suffered significant layoffs. So they have about 400 staff and a sizable portion is gone. I've seen the number of 150 be knocked around in a few places. We will need to see. Now, the studio later confirmed saying that they need to restructure our studio to ensure we can succeed in spite of headwinds facing the industry. And of course, there are headwinds facing the industry. The bizarre infinite growth that everybody seemed to project mid-pandemic was never going to happen, and it hasn't happened. So complete dipshits that I suppose didn't understand understand fundamentals and just let line go up. They're now facing what happens when lines stop go up because, you know, there's no longer a pandemic forcing everybody to stay inside their house and play video games. How are these people so well compensated for what they do and they can make mistakes like this? Who knows? Or maybe the whole thing to them is just a big old scam. Let's do some banditry and make some money quick. Anyway, yes, the headwinds are bad, but in this case, it's Embracer having to restructure everything that they own. So they were able to buy so much of the industry, absolutely screw their own finances by hinging everything on a deal so that when that deal didn't go through, now what have Embracer done? They've acquired everything. They've shot themselves in the foot and multiple other limbs as well, and now they're just forcing everybody else to take massive hits because of their failures at corporate. Because in so many cases, this ain't the failures of the studios that are getting the cut, it would seem. But there's actually some more going on. So there's a support studio, PTW. They have also seen layoffs. Kotaku was told that 45 staff were let go. Mostly this was QA staff based outside the USA. This is another support studio whose portfolio includes big things like, Nintendo products. But they are facing layoffs as well. So things being rough for the support studios is kind of worrying because, look, you would think if all of these big studios were getting gutted because they were, sort of like big, maybe publicly owned or, say under Embrace or whatever, them, getting cut would maybe make you think, well, maybe there'd be more of a role for support studios. But no, the sports studios are not safe. Nobody appears to be safe. And there's a side of this that I don't see be talked about much, but it's bound to be happening because it's way harder to get money in indie games now. Like, just flat out. It is. Inflation rates. Turns out those matter. Anyway, getting money in indie is hard. Getting money anywhere in the industry is hard. The thing is, though, when an indie studio of 6 or 7 people goes bust and it's a studio that maybe hasn't released a humongous game, well, you don't really hear about that. And I just have to wonder, like, there was, 14,500 games put onto Steam last year? How many indies are dying, but because they don't make enough noise when they die, like, we just don't know. How many hundreds is that? How many maybe thousands over the last maybe year and a half where all of these layoffs have been happening? You just don't know, but it is a spooky thing. Now, unfortunately, the bad news actually is continuing. And this time we at least do get a bit of a chart to go with it. And this is definitely something where I have some thoughts. Okay, so the SteamWorld developer sort of turned publisher Thunderful have announced they're reducing their headcount by 20%. Now, this is a year where they've seen successes, at least critically, with Viewfinder, Planet of Lana, SteamWorld, and some other projects as well. Sorry if you can hear wind noise. There's literally I think a 90 miles an hour storm going on outside. Anyway, on a weekly basis, we're seeing situations like this. The most recent one that we saw was with TinyBuild. And of course, this kind of group, you got TinyBuild. Obviously, Devolver Digital are one of those indie publishers that just achieved a scale that was pretty crazy. And then, of course, they went for that public stock listing, which, yeah, hey, going public, sell those shares, get some money, get a big war chest, do things with it, use that to fund a major investment. You can see how all of that seems great. But, well, here's the Thunderful stock price. As you can see, it is down by 92.49% to 5.39 Swedish krona. So that's a bit unfortunate for them. Of course, looking at, I need to be careful here when I'm sharing anecdotes because some of them can be pretty specific. Let's just say there's individuals I know who ended up in a company sort of in and around one of these. And the big money person is like, oh, you should see the size of our war chest. Oh boy, howdy, we got so much money. Then it turns out, right? Size of your war chest and your earnings per share are rather different. And yes, the market was not, let's just say, not responding well to the earnings per share, and that company has had issues. Oh boy, isn't it all just lovely? So yes, obviously looking at the companies here, TinyBuild, they recently killed Versus Evil. Man, it's sad. I've pitched projects to Versus Evil, so it's just kind of weird. We saw those guys, now they're gone. Crazy. Versus Evil, Banner Saga, they published those as an example. They themselves, I believe, were good financially. It's just TinyBuild wasn't, so you're gone. And that's just the brutal situation here. And I suppose what I'm really left thinking here is, whenever these acquisitions happen, who gets the money? I mean, hopefully there's some sort of bonus to the workers in those companies when an acquisition happens, but, mainly speaking, it's the people who own shares in the company, the founders, that kind of thing. They get the payday. And I suppose that's the thing. When you're a founder and you're thinking, okay, I've worked for 10 years, worked really hard, we've got some really good finances. This partner, maybe can help us get to the next level, make a project of a bigger scale. That would be really exciting. And then you're also thinking, I was working for below minimum wage for like 4 years, and then the company did okay, and blah blah blah. Yeah, sure, they're going to buy us for 3 million, and I'm going to get $1 million. Wahoo! But then the thing is, that control that you give up is absolutely the problem, because here, this is really cringe, but to borrow some lines to the trailer for our video game that we got Ian McElhenney to speak, you don't exactly want to just be a victim of someone else's decision. And really what we're learning here is that far too many people are, and that's something to think about. So that's it for today's video. You can check out the one we published yesterday, and guess what? There will be one tomorrow. We are full steam ahead, 6 videos a week. At least that is the goal. Thank you for all of your support so far in 2024. If you want to help the show, you can check out our sponsor. With that said, I'll see you next time.